On a small, forgotten outpost on the edge of space, the air was thick with the smell of oil and metal. The station hummed with the sound of engines and lights flickering in the dark. People from all over the galaxy came and went, some traders, some travelers, and some looking for something, or someone. But no one had seen the girl yet. The human, named Max, was leaning against a rusted wall, watching the chaos of the outpost. His eyes scanned the crowd, always alert, always ready for danger. He wasn't exactly looking for trouble, but trouble had a way of finding him. He was used to it by now. Max wasn't much of a fighter. He wasn't a soldier either. But he had skills that kept him alive. He knew how to get in and out of places without anyone noticing. And he knew how to make deals, good ones, bad ones, and everything in between. It was the sound of footsteps that caught his attention. A girl, young and fragile, with green skin and eyes as wide as the stars, walked into the station. She looked out of place, like she didn't belong in this harsh metal world. Her hands were trembling and her eyes darted around like she was searching for someone. The moment she stepped into the station, every person nearby stopped what they were doing. Whispers filled the air. Max didn't know why, but something about her made his gut twist. She didn't belong here, and yet here she was. Then she saw him. Their eyes locked, and for a brief moment, the bustling station faded away. Max felt something stir inside him. It was a look of desperation, a look that told him everything he needed to know. This girl was in trouble. She took a step forward, then another, before stopping just in front of him. She spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper, but Max could hear the fear in her tone. "Please," she begged. "I need your help." Max raised an eyebrow. "Help? From me?" The girl nodded quickly. I'm being hunted. They're going to sell me. I don't want to be sold. Please." Her voice cracked at the last word. Max's first instinct was to turn away, to ignore her. He'd helped people before, but it always came at a cost. Trouble followed, and the cost of helping someone rarely made it worth it. But there was something in her eyes, something that made him hesitate. "Who's hunting you?" he asked, his voice steady. "An alien merchant," she said quickly. "He wants to buy me. I don't want to be his property. I don't want to be sold like some kind of thing." Max's eyes narrowed. He knew what it was like to be in a bad situation. But this was something different. "What do you want from me?" Max asked. The girl looked around nervously, then stepped closer. "I can't go to the authorities. They don't care about me, but you can help me. I'll do anything. I just need you to protect me. Keep me safe from him. I can't let him get me." Max studied her for a moment. There was something genuine in her voice, something that spoke of fear he knew too well. "Anything?" Max asked, his tone colder than before. The girl nodded. "Anything." Max paused, thinking. He didn't like the sound of it. He had no idea who she was or why she was so valuable to this merchant. But one thing was clear. She was in danger, and he couldn't just ignore it. He wasn't that kind of person. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "All right, I'll help you. But I need you to understand something. This won't be easy, and it won't be without risk. You sure you want to get involved in this?" The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. She nodded again. "I have no choice. If I don't, they'll sell me, and I don't want to be used." Her voice faltered, but the desperation was still there. Max couldn't help but feel for her. He didn't know what this was all about, but he wasn't about to leave someone, to die. He wasn't a hero, but he couldn't just turn his back on someone in need. "All right," Max said again, his decision made. "I'll help you, but we need to get out of here first, and you're going to have to trust me." The girl looked at him with a mixture of relief and hope. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I promise you won't regret this." Max didn't reply. He turned and walked toward the back of the station, keeping a close eye on their surroundings. The girl followed, staying close behind him. There was no time to waste. He didn't know what he was getting into, but one thing was for sure. The girl was more than just a runaway, and whoever was after her wasn't going to give up easily. Max's mind raced as they moved deeper into the station. He knew this wouldn't be easy, but now that he was involved, there was no turning back. And, as he glanced over his shoulder at the girl, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Max didn't waste any time. As soon as he made his decision, his instincts kicked in. The girl had barely caught up to him when he turned a sharp corner, his boots clicking on the cold metal floor. The station's layout was a maze of corridors, each one darker than the last. The air smelled of rust and old technology, and the hum of engines echoed through the walls. The girl was right behind him, her steps light but hurried, as though she feared she might disappear if she slowed down. Max could feel her fear, but it didn't stop him. He was moving with purpose, scanning every shadow, every possible escape route. He had to get her out of here before whoever was after her found them. "We need to go deeper into the station," Max said without looking back. "We'll lose them in the lower levels." The girl didn't ask questions. She simply nodded, her green skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Max could see her eyes now, wide, frantic, and full of uncertainty. She was trusting him, even though she had no reason to. They reached a hidden door at the end of the corridor, one that Max had used before to slip past the station's patrols. It opened with a soft hiss, revealing a small dark room filled with crates and old equipment. He motioned for her to go inside. "Stay here," Max ordered, his voice firm. "Don't make a sound. If anyone comes through that door, you need to stay quiet, understood?" The girl didn't speak at first, but her nod was enough. She stepped into the room, pressing herself against a crate as Max followed. The door closed behind them, sealing them in darkness. Max's eyes adjusted quickly, and he pulled out a small device from his pocket. It was a simple tracker, a tool he used to find hidden objects or trace movements in real time. He activated it, watching the blinking red dot on the screen. "Okay," Max muttered to himself. "They haven't found us yet." The silence stretched between them, both of them waiting, listening for any signs of pursuit. But all Max could hear was the quiet hum of the station's engines, the sound of his own breath. His mind raced through the possible outcomes of what was to come. It didn't take long before the girl spoke again. Her voice was soft, hesitant, like she was unsure of what to say, but needed to say something. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "You don't even know me." Max didn't answer right away. Instead, he checked the tracker again, his eyes scanning the blinking dot. The alien merchant's goons were still moving nearby, but they hadn't reached their location yet. He could hear the faint sound of boots on metal, distant but growing. "Closer." "You're in trouble," Max finally said, his voice flat. "That's enough for me." "But that's it?" Her voice shook slightly. "Just because I'm in trouble? You don't care about me. I'm just a stranger." Max turned to look at her. Her face was pale and the fear was still there, clouding her eyes. He could see the vulnerability, the feeling of being out of control. It wasn't just fear of being sold, it was fear of being lost, of having no way out. "Yeah," Max replied, his voice low but steady. "I don't know you, but I know what it's like to have no choice, to be stuck in a situation with no way out. That's something I can understand." For a moment, the girl didn't say anything. She just stood there, her shoulders hunched, as if she was trying to make sense of his words. Then, slowly, she stepped forward, closer to Max. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to do this, but thank you." Max didn't respond. He just nodded, his focus returning to the tracker. The aliens' goons were getting closer now. He could hear them in the corridor just outside, their voices muffled but unmistakable. They were looking for her. Max took a deep breath, pushing his doubts aside. There was no time for thinking now. The plan was simple: get out of the station without being caught. "We need to move," Max said, glancing at her. "Stay close, don't speak unless I say so. Follow my lead." The girl nodded quickly, her fear now mixed with something else, something Max hadn't expected. It was determination. She had no choice. Just like him. She had made a decision, and there was no turning back. Max reached for the door and pulled it open slowly. The shadows seemed to swallow them as they slipped into the next corridor. They moved like ghosts, unnoticed by the stations, workers and guards, but Max could feel the tension building, the constant threat that at any moment they might be discovered. They turned a corner and ran straight into another group of alien traders. Their eyes widened as they saw Max and the girl, and for a split second, Max thought they might be in trouble. But then the girl stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong as she addressed the traders. "They're after me," she said quickly. "I need your help, please." Max stood frozen, unsure of what was happening, but the traders didn't move. Instead, they stepped aside, making way for the girl and Max. Their eyes didn't leave them, but they didn't stop them either. Max's heart raced as they passed through the traders without incident, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Had they been bought off? Or was there something else going on here? He glanced at the girl, who was looking at the ground, her face tight with worry. Whatever was happening, they were not safe yet. The neon lights of the city blurred as Max and the girl moved through the streets, the bright colors reflecting off the wet pavement beneath their feet. The hustle of the market district was in full swing, with traders shouting over one another, the smell of exotic foods and alien perfumes filling the air. Max hated the noise, but he needed to blend in, to make sure no one knew they were running. The girl, whose name Max still hadn't learned, kept her head down, trying to stay out of sight. Her pale green skin shimmered faintly under the lights, a stark contrast to the darker shades of the city around them. Max kept a few steps ahead, his eyes scanning every passerby, every corner, every shadow. He was used to the tension, but something was different today. Something was off. He could feel it in the way the crowd moved. There was a strange energy in the air, a sense of something shifting beneath the surface. Max's gut tightened as he turned a corner and saw a familiar face in the crowd. At first, he thought it was just another trick of the lights. But no, there it was again. The merchant's goons. Two of them walking casually through the crowd, their eyes scanning every face, their hands resting on weapons hidden beneath their cloaks. Max's heart skipped a beat. The girl hadn't seen them yet, but Max knew they were after her. They were too close, and there was no way they could escape without being noticed. The alley ahead was a dead end, and Max could already hear the thudding footsteps of more mercenaries closing in from the other direction. They were trapped. Without a word, Max grabbed the girl's arm and yanked her into the nearest building, a rundown cantina with flashing lights and loud music. The door slammed shut behind them, and they were surrounded by the low hum of alien chatter and the clinking of glasses. Max's eyes darted around, searching for an exit or somewhere to hide. The place was packed, but his mind was already working. How to get out? How to stay unnoticed? "Stay low," he whispered to the girl, his voice cold and urgent. "Stay close." She nodded, her face pale but determined. She had no choice but to trust him now. Max pushed his way through the crowd, keeping her behind him. They moved toward the back of the cantina, past the tables and booths filled with noisy patrons. But Max's mind was racing, constantly looking for a way out. His gut told him they weren't safe here, not with the mercenaries so close. He stopped near the back door, his eyes catching a flicker of movement. Another figure, slightly familiar, stepped into view. The door opened slowly, and a tall, cloaked figure stepped in. Max's blood went cold. It was him. The man in the cloak was the same figure who had been watching them from a distance earlier. Max had seen him on the outskirts of the station, too calm, too calculating. Max's instincts told him the figure wasn't just some random bystander. He was part of the plan. Before Max could react, the figure raised his hand, signaling the mercenaries. Max felt the girl freeze beside him. The betrayal hit him like a punch to the stomach. The man in the cloak had led them right into a trap. The mercenaries stormed into the cantina, moving like shadows, their eyes locking onto Max and the girl. Panic rippled through the crowd as people began to scatter. But Max didn't have time to think. He had to act, and fast. With a sharp motion, Max grabbed the girl's arm and dragged her toward the back door, throwing it open. The alley behind. The cantina was narrow and dark, but it was their only chance. He pushed her ahead of him, but just as he was about to follow, a harsh voice called out from behind him. "Running, are we?" The cloaked figure's voice was smooth, cold. Max didn't stop. He couldn't stop. The alley opened up into the street, and Max's mind was already calculating his next move. They had a few moments, just a few, to make it to the hidden docking bay where Max had parked his old ship. But they couldn't outrun the mercenaries forever. He needed a plan. The girl tugged on his sleeve, her voice shaking. "Who was that? Why did he betray us?" Max didn't look back. His eyes were scanning the crowd ahead, looking for any signs of danger. He didn't have an answer for her, not yet. But he knew one thing for sure. There was more to this than he'd realized. The mercenaries didn't just want to capture the girl. They wanted something else. And that meant the stakes were much higher than he had thought. "We don't have time to talk," Max said, his voice tense. "We just need to get out of here." They darted down the narrow street, weaving through the crowd, the sound of footsteps growing louder behind them. Max's heart was pounding in his chest. He could feel the mercenaries getting closer, but he didn't dare look back. His mind raced. What were they after? And why had the cloaked figure led them right into a trap? A part of him knew they weren't the only ones playing a game here. Someone wanted the girl for something more than just money. And Max was about to find out exactly what that was. As they turned the corner toward the docking bay, Max's eyes locked onto a figure standing at the entrance of the alley. It was another man, tall, with a confident posture and a wide grin on his face. He knew exactly what was happening. And now, it seemed, they had been caught in the web of something much larger than either of them could have imagined. Max's pulse thudded in his ears as he and the girl sprinted through the narrow, dimly lit alleyway. The sounds of the mercenaries' boots echoed like thunder behind them, closing in with every step. Sweat dripped down Max's forehead as he pulled the girl along, barely able to hear her labored breathing over the chaotic noise in his mind. They were out of time. The hidden docking bay, the only escape route Max had, was still several blocks away. Every step felt like it brought them closer to the inevitable, being cornered, trapped, or worse. But Max wasn't ready to give up. He never was. He had faced impossible odds before, and this time, he wouldn't let them take the girl. "Keep running!" he shouted over his shoulder. The girl, breathless and wide-eyed, nodded but didn't say a word. She was quick, but Max could feel her fear weighing her down, slowing her movements. She was still too new to this world of danger and desperation. Max couldn't afford to look back. He had to get them both out. They turned a corner, and suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. A low hum vibrated through the air, and Max's instincts screamed at him to duck, to take cover. But it was too late. A flash of light burst out from the alley ahead, blinding them both. Max's heart dropped into his stomach as a massive ship, its sleek silver hull gleaming in the flickering lights, hovered just overhead. The sound of its engines roared like an animal about to pounce. A cold mechanical voice crackled through a speaker from the ship. "You are surrounded. Surrender immediately." Max's chest tightened. There was no escaping this. They had been boxed in. His eyes darted around, searching for any way out, but the mercenaries were everywhere, moving in from every direction, trapping them in a circle. The girl grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with panic. "What do we do now?" she gasped. Max's mind raced. He needed a way out, something, anything. His eyes landed on the flickering neon signs above. The ship, the mercenaries, they were all just part of a larger game, a game he hadn't fully understood until now. But there was one thing Max knew for sure. If they didn't move fast, they'd be dead in seconds. The ship's engines hummed louder as if it were getting ready to take them in. Max had only one idea, and it was risky. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice low but firm. "We're going up." Before the girl could respond, Max grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a narrow stairway that led to the rooftops. The mercenaries hadn't anticipated them going vertical. They never expected anyone to fight from above. But Max wasn't going to just lie down and let them win. They raced up the stairs, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the stairwell. Max's mind was already calculating the next move. He knew the station's rooftops would provide the cover they needed. The mercenaries would be forced to come after them from the ground, and they would have no clear view of the escape route. It was their only shot. Max reached the top of the stairs and pulled the girl up onto the roof, just as the ship landed with a heavy thud below. The wind whipped through the city's skyline, and the starlight above glistened like diamonds scattered across black velvet. But Max didn't have time to admire the view. "Keep moving," Max urged, not even slowing down. They had no time to waste. They sprinted across the rooftops, jumping from one building to the next, always staying ahead of the ship's searchlights. The girl was fast, but Max could see the strain in her eyes. She was getting tired, and there was no way they'd survive a prolonged chase. They had to move faster. As they reached the edge of the rooftop, Max heard the sound of the mercenaries' voices below. The ship's engines roared back to life, its lights sweeping across the skyline, like a predator scanning for its prey. The girl stumbled slightly, and Max grabbed her by the arm to steady her. "One more jump," he said, his voice tight. "Just follow me." Max led the way, leaping across a narrow gap between buildings. His feet hit the next rooftop with a loud thud, and he turned back to make sure the girl was following. She hesitated, for only a moment before pushing herself forward, her hands reaching for the edge. Her fingers brushed against the rooftop just as the mercenaries arrived below. The ship hovered a few meters above, its searchlights cutting through the night like beams of death. Max's heart was in his throat as he reached down and pulled her up onto the roof, just as the ship's engines roared once more. "Go!" Max barked, pushing the girl ahead of him. "We need to get to the Stardust Fields. Max had heard rumors of them, fields of glowing dust suspended in space like particles frozen in time. They were supposed to be a natural phenomenon, but Max had heard whispers of something more, something hidden among the stardust, something that could offer them the chance to escape the clutches of whoever was hunting them. And now, it seemed, the only way out was through those fields. The night sky stretched out in front of them as they sprinted toward the edge of the station. Max knew they didn't have much time before the mercenaries realized where they were headed, but the Stardust Fields were their only hope, their only chance to disappear. As the first beam of light from the ship cut across the sky above them, Max grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her toward the waiting shuttle hidden in the shadows. "We're going to make it," he whispered to her, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. The mercenaries were closing in, but Max wasn't about to let them win. Not now, not when they were so close to freedom. The stars seemed to pulse around them as the small shuttle shot through the endless void. Inside, Max gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles white. The quiet hum of the engine was the only sound in the cramped cockpit, but it did little to ease the tension gnawing at his insides. He kept his eyes locked on the starfield ahead, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the mercenaries, to the betrayal, and to the girl sitting silently in the seat beside him. She hadn't spoken since they'd left the station. Her face was pale, eyes distant as if she were lost in thought, or lost in fear. Max didn't blame her. He had no idea where they were headed either. All he knew was that they needed to get far, far away from the station, away from the hunter mercenaries, and away from the shadowy figures that seemed to want the girl so badly. The girl, whose name he still hadn't learned. Max glanced over at her, the soft glow from the dashboard lights catching the faint shimmer of her green skin. She was staring at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously around one another. It was clear that she wasn't just afraid of being caught. There was something deeper, something more personal about her fear, something she hadn't said. "Where are we going?" Her voice broke the silence, soft but full of a quiet urgency. Max hesitated, his hand still on the controls, but his eyes never leaving the path ahead. He wasn't sure how much to tell her. He wasn't even sure if he believed in what he was about to do. But there was something inside him, a gut feeling, a deep instinct that told him this was their only option. "We're heading to a sanctuary," he said carefully. "A place hidden among the stars. It's far enough that no one can follow us. For now." She looked at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of a lie. Max held her gaze but didn't flinch. His voice was calm, steady, though a storm raged inside his mind. "Sanctuary?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What does that mean?" Max took a deep breath. "It's a place where no one is supposed to find us, a place where you can be safe, where you can be free." She seemed to take in his words, but the doubt in her eyes remained. She didn't trust him fully, and why should she? After everything that had happened, after the betrayal, the danger, they both had a lot of trust to rebuild. "Are we really safe there?" she asked, her voice trembling with something more than fear. It was something deeper, something Max couldn't quite place. Max glanced at her again, his mind struggling to find the right words. He wanted to tell her that everything would be fine, that they'd be safe. But he couldn't lie. He wasn't sure of anything anymore. All he knew was that they had no other choice but to go forward. "I don't know," he said honestly, his voice low. "But it's our only chance. If we stay here, we'll never be free. The mercenaries will find us. And whoever else is behind this, they won't stop." The girl didn't respond right away. She just stared out at the vastness of space, her gaze lost in the endless ocean of stars. Max turned his attention back to the controls, guiding the shuttle into the edge of the stardust fields. The glowing particles shimmered against the blackness of space, like faint traces of forgotten light, dust from stars long gone. Max's heart raced. This was the part that made him nervous. The stardust fields weren't just beautiful, they were dangerous. The swirling dust could hide anything: hidden ships, old remnants of battles long past, even forgotten outposts. It was a place where the rules of the galaxy didn't quite apply. No one ventured here unless they had no other choice, and Max had no other choice. As the shuttle cut through the glowing clouds of stardust, the girl finally spoke again, her voice a bit stronger this time. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, the question hanging in the air between them like a heavy weight. Max looked at her, his jaw tightening. He hadn't expected her to ask, at least not so soon. He had no good answer, no easy explanation. He had his own demons, his own reasons for doing the things he did. But helping her, maybe that was something he had to do because he couldn't live with himself if he didn't. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice rough. "Maybe because I've been in situations like yours. I know what it feels like to have no one, to have nowhere to go. I can't leave you to face this alone." For a moment, there was only the sound of the shuttle's engine, a low hum as it moved deeper into the field of stardust. Max focused on the path ahead, not daring to look at the girl. He wasn't sure if she understood, but he needed her to know that he wasn't just trying to save her. He was saving himself too. After a long silence, the girl finally spoke again, her voice quieter, but there was something softer in it now. "Thank you," she whispered, almost to herself. Max didn't know how to respond. He couldn't promise her that everything would be okay, that they'd be safe. But what he could do was get them through this one day at a time, and right now, that meant getting to the sanctuary hidden among the stars. As they moved deeper into the swirling mists of stardust, a strange calm settled over Max. The danger, the pursuit, it was all still out there, just beyond the veil of this cosmic dust. But here in this moment they had a chance, and that chance was all they needed. The shuttle drifted silently through the fields of stardust, the glowing particles surrounding them like a shroud of ancient secrets. Outside, the stars seemed to burn brighter than ever, casting an eerie, otherworldly light on the shuttle's hull. Max had never seen space so beautiful and yet so terrifying. The stardust fields were a maze, a place where even experienced navigators could get lost. And in the heart of that maze, there was something waiting, something they hadn't yet fully understood. Max stared at the control panel, his fingers lightly brushing the buttons. The girl sat in the seat beside him, staring out of the window at the twinkling lights of the distant stars. There was an uncomfortable silence between them, one that neither of them had the words to break. Max didn't know what to say. His mind was still reeling from the events that had brought them here. The betrayal, the chase, the endless questions about the girl's past that had yet to be answered. "Why do they want you?" Max finally asked, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The girl didn't look at him at first. Her fingers twisted nervously around the edge of her sleeve, and her lips parted, but no sound came out. She had been so quiet for the last few hours, as if she were hiding something deep inside, something that made her hesitate to speak. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I'm not like them." Max raised an eyebrow, glancing at her. "Not like who?" "Not like the others," she said, her eyes finally meeting his. "The others who were born in this galaxy. I was created, not born. I'm not supposed to exist." Max frowned, trying to piece together what she was saying. "You were created? How?" The girl's gaze dropped back to her hands, her face pale. "I was engineered by them. A weapon. Something they could control. But something went wrong." Max's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what he had expected, but this was not it. "You're telling me you were made to be a weapon?" She nodded slowly, her eyes distant. "Yes, I was created to be a soldier for their army. But when I became aware of what I was meant to be, I ran. I couldn't be their tool. So I left. I've been running ever since." Max was silent for a long moment, his mind struggling to grasp the enormity of what she was telling him. A weapon, a soldier, created, not born. It felt like something out of a nightmare that was now unfolding right in front of him. "And the mercenaries," Max said slowly, his voice thick with understanding. "They're after you because you escaped. They want to take you back." The girl nodded, her face tight with grief. "They don't care what I am. They just want to control me again. But if they catch me, I'm not sure what will happen. I'm not sure they even know what I can do. What I was made to do." Max leaned, back in his seat, his mind spinning. The stakes were higher than he had realized. The girl wasn't just some innocent runaway. She was a weapon, a dangerous one, and whoever was chasing her had no idea how much power she might have. "How do you know they don't know what you can do?" Max asked, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. The girl hesitated, her lips trembling, as she tried to find the right words. "Because I don't remember everything. The memories, they were taken from me. And what I do remember, well, it's not something I can control." Max stared at her, his breath caught in his chest. She was powerful, yes, but she didn't even understand her own power. It was like a bomb waiting to go off, and no one knew how to defuse it. For a long moment, there was silence between them, broken only by the soft hum of the shuttle's engine. Max's mind raced. This was no longer just a simple escape. They weren't just running from a few mercenaries anymore. They were running from something much bigger, much darker, something that had been hidden for far too long. "How far are we from the sanctuary?" the girl asked suddenly, her voice steady now as though she had made a decision. Max didn't look at her, but his hands tightened on the controls. "Not far. We're almost there. But I don't think that's going to matter much longer." The girl looked at him, her expression unreadable. "What do you mean?" Max's gaze flicked to the starry expanse ahead of them. "We've been followed. Not by the mercenaries, but by someone else. Someone who knows exactly who you are. And if we don't act soon, we'll be too late." Her eyes widened, and she stood up quickly, her voice rising. "What are you talking about? Who's following us?" Max didn't respond right away. Instead, he pulled up a map of the stardust fields on the dashboard. A blinking red dot appeared, far too close for comfort. It was a ship, large, fast, and unmistakably hunting them, and it was closing in fast. Max's jaw clenched. "Someone with a lot of resources. Someone who doesn't want you to make it to the sanctuary." The girl's breath hitched and she turned toward him, her face pale but determined. Then we need to keep moving. We can't let them catch us. Max nodded, his grip tightening on the controls. I was hoping you'd say that. As the shuttle accelerated, the stars streaking by like glowing lines of light, Max's mind raced. The girl wasn't just running from the mercenaries anymore. She was running from the past, a past that was quickly catching up with her. And as much as Max wanted to believe they had a chance to escape, something told him that the worst was yet to come. The shuttle shook as it sliced through the final layer of stardust, the thick cloud of glowing particles now behind them. The endless void stretched out ahead, the stars cold and distant like silent witnesses to the chaos unfolding below. Max's hands were steady on the controls, but his mind was far from calm. The enemy ship was still tracking them, and the girl, his reluctant ally, his only companion, was on the edge of breaking. The sanctuary was just ahead, a place he had only heard of in hushed rumors. A place where even the most powerful of enemies could be kept at bay. But the closer they got, the more Max realized that sanctuary wasn't the answer anymore. They were already too deep in this fight to escape untouched. There was no running anymore. How much farther? The girl asked, her voice quiet but edged with something like fear, something that Max hadn't heard from her before. Max looked at the scanner. The enemy ship was closing in, its red blip moving steadily toward them. Not much farther, he said, his voice betraying none of the urgency in his mind. But we won't make it there in time, not with them on our tail. The girl's eyes darted to the control panel, then to the stars ahead, her breath coming quicker. Now. What do we do? Max gritted his teeth. The stars ahead were beautiful, serene, a peaceful silence that mocked the chaos they were about to face. We fight. She looked at him, her face uncertain. Fight? But we're outnumbered. Max's jaw tightened, his mind already moving toward the only option left. We don't have a choice. We have to make a stand. This is the only chance we have. The girl seemed to hesitate for a moment, the weight of his words settling on her shoulders. Her eyes flicked to the ship chasing them, then back to Max. For the first time since he'd met her, there was a spark of resolve in her expression, a glint of something fierce and determined that he hadn't seen before. You're right, she said softly, her voice stronger now. I'm not running anymore. Max nodded grimly, his grip tightening on the shuttle's controls. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy like a storm about to break. They were entering eventide, a region of space where time itself seemed to slow down, a place where celestial bodies collided and formed a chaotic, ever-changing nebula. It was both beautiful and deadly, and it was their last hope. Stay close, Max muttered, pulling the shuttle into a sharp dive. The enemy ship was still behind them, just a few clicks away. He could hear the hum of its engines, the distant thrumming that told him the battle was inevitable. They entered the swirling chaos of eventide. Nebulas of crimson and violet twisted around them, the stars blurred by the intense gravitational forces pulling everything toward the heart of the storm. The shuttle jerked violently as the first wave of turbulence hit. The girl grabbed onto the seat, her knuckles white. But she didn't scream. She didn't look away. Ready? Max asked, glancing at her one last time. She nodded, her eyes burning, with the same resolve Max had seen in soldiers he'd fought beside. I'm ready. Max punched the throttle, sending the shuttle into a sharp roll. The enemy ship, now closer than ever, followed suit, its guns charging up. They were getting too close, and Max knew that if he didn't act fast, they would be sitting ducks in the storm. He needed to get them both out of this alive. The girl was no longer just a terrified stranger. She was part of this now. Part of the fight. Part of the plan. Max didn't have all the answers, but he had one goal: survive. Max took a deep breath. Brace yourself. He slammed the control lever forward, sending the shuttle into a series of high-speed maneuvers, weaving through the nebula like a ghost. The enemy ship followed, but it was slower, more cumbersome in the twisting winds of the stardust fields. Max could feel the tension building in his chest as he pushed the shuttle faster, darting between the cosmic clouds and asteroid fields. It was a gamble, but it was all they had. The first shot from the enemy ship rang out, narrowly missing the shuttle as it veered to the side. Max's eyes locked onto the blinking light on the dashboard. Their fuel reserves were dangerously low. They had no time to waste. One wrong move and it was over. "Hold on," Max shouted, yanking the shuttle into a tight loop, aiming directly at an asteroid cluster ahead. The enemy ship was right behind them, firing relentlessly, but the dense cloud of asteroids forced them to follow at a distance. Max's mind raced. He could see the path ahead, an opening in the asteroid belt that led to a clearing where the stardust fields would thin out. It was their only shot. Now or never, Max muttered under his breath. As they neared the clearing, Max pulled the shuttle up sharply, aiming straight for the heart of the asteroid field. The enemy ship was too slow to follow, its weapons unable to fire at the moving target. The girl's breath was coming faster now, her eyes fixed on the approaching storm. "Are you ready to fight?" Max asked again, the urgency in his voice rising. The girl took a deep breath, her hands gripping the sides of the seat. "I'm ready." Max pushed the throttle forward full force as the clearing ahead opened up. The stardust parted, and for a brief moment, there was nothing but the silence of space. No enemies, no chaos, just the vast expanse before them. But then, the unmistakable sound of enemy guns firing shattered the silence. They weren't alone in the clearing. Max's heart sank as the realization hit him. They hadn't escaped. The real battle was only just beginning.